Hi everyone in the Reclaiming You Lounge. So here we are, just after 3 on Wednesday afternoon. So I will see if anyone joins because I know it's kind of a weird random time to do a live stream, but I really wanted to go into more depth and just explain a little bit about my post and of course this new holistic stress solutionist positioning, because I think it's really important because as we know, stress underpins everything. So if you are there, I'd love you to say hello and to let me know where you're watching from or tuning in from. If you want to get a little cup of tea, that would be nice too. We can have a little cup of tea together. I've got my little, this is kind of an interesting tea. It's a collagen, rose petals, all sorts of things, plus a hormone balancing component. So, you know, I love all the things in terms of like guinea pigging myself for new products as they come out. So anyways, I said, if you're there, let me know. And we will have a little discussion about stress and what is actually driving the stress. So let's have a little cup of tea. If you have one handy, let's take a little sip. And if you're joining me for the replay, just do the hashtag replay. So let's talk about stress. Now, stress is an interesting thing because it's a term that we kind of throw around a lot. You know, I'm so stressed, you know, it just gives me so much stress, you know, but what actually is stress? And it's funny with stress, it's one of those things, as we know, it's highly subjective. You know, what stresses one person probably might not stress someone else. And I mean, of course, you know, there is common things that will stress people, like, you know, for instance, if there is an earthquake or something like that happening, yeah. But, you know, when it comes to a situation like in terms of leaving the house, you know, we know there is conditions like agoraphobia and things like that where people actually don't want to leave the house. So there's varying degrees. And of course, it's all about our filter. It's our experiences, you know, our backgrounds, our, you know, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. All of that comes into play. So when it comes to stress, as we know, yes, it's very subjective, but essentially what we're talking about is, you know, the whole stress response, the fight or flight. And I don't really need to go into the technical side of it too much, but needless to say, you know, you've got the hypothalamus, the pituitary in the brain, and then we talk about, you know, the little adrenals, the little walnut-sized glands that sit on top of the kidneys. And of course, the thyroid's also involved, like really actually everything's kind of involved to an extent, and the liver as well. Because obviously we want to be, you know, making sure that we're detoxing some of these excess hormones as they arise. It then, as we know, stress will have a flow-on effect. And don't get me wrong, you know, we need a certain amount of stress, like to, you know, at certain times to get us out of a situation. And, you know, but in saying that, most of us aren't going back to homeostasis. We're not getting back to base. You know, it's almost like this stress response becomes the new norm. So if you can imagine, if here's the norm, you know, we're so stressed all the time that for us, we're never actually getting back to that equilibrium, that, you know, balance. We're kind of, the new balance becomes up here. And this can continue for quite a long time. Like there's the various stages, you know, people talk about adrenal fatigue and things like that. You know, when you start looking at the labs, so, you know, I'm talking, you can get urine or saliva or blood to look at how your cortisol stress hormone, which is the ultimate stress hormone, you can have that measured. But I would not recommend just going and getting a snapshot because, you know, people have come to me and they've shown me, just say they've had their blood test first thing in the morning. Well, that's great, but what's your cortisol doing over the course of the day? What's it doing at night? And likewise, if you're getting it in the afternoon, well, what's it like in the morning? What's it like at night? Because obviously you want cortisol to be nice and, you know, like you want the stress hormones essentially to be more, you know, have more of an abundance of it. You know, first thing in the mornings, you're out the day. And then, of course, you want it to peter off and you want the sleep hormones to kick in. But they can oppose each other. So if you start looking at like a, say, for instance, a saliva test of someone's cortisol over like a 16, 17-hour window, you can see, well, is it following the normal curve or is it, you know, rising at night when it should be quite low and hence people can't have a deep, sound sleep? So that's the first thing. So then, of course, you've got all these people out there talking about the vagus nerve, and yet the vagus nerve, it is a really important connection between the brain and the gut. And they have found that by stimulating this vagus nerve, which as we know is one of the cranial nerves, that it has been able to help people with things like PTSD and anxiety and even like inflammatory bowel disease and things, which is great. So, and I mean, but you can do your own things like gargling and, singing and stuff like that can actually just sort of help with that vagal tone. But that's for another discussion. So that's from a physical perspective. And we know the stress sensations, it's like the racing heart, the palpitations, maybe the nervous belly, sweaty palms, all that sort of stuff. And even just feeling agitated, shallow breathing, pupils are dilating, stuff like that. That can all be physical signs that, you're stressed. But as I said, our bodies are kind of adapting to more and more stress. And it's like we're adapting to it longer term, but then it hits us in a big way. And the thing with stress is, once this stress hormone is, once there's an abundance of it, it will be affecting your immune system. It'll be affecting your digestive system, your hormonal system, your cardiovascular system, your circulatory system. Like pretty much every system will be impacted by stress. And I don't want to stress you, pardon the pun, but this is what's happening. But the thing is, where it can be frustrating for people is it's like they will go and try and seek support for it. And they're either told, well, what are you worrying about? And I know myself over the years, I went on a mental health plan and I went to see a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, and, all the things. Didn't feel talking about it all the time helped me. For some people it can. And I know, in parts of the world, it's kind of a standard thing. Like I know people in the US, not always, but will often say that they've had therapists for many years. It's just part of their wellness plan, which is great. But, I did all of that, but I was also prescribed antidepressants. And look, time and a place for everything, no judgment. But I feel like it's just a Band-Aid approach. It's like, just take this, come on, it's fine, just kind of, And it's like, okay, but we need to start thinking about why am I stressed in the first place? And this is what I really want to get into today. And this is what the whole gist of my post was about. Looking at these various facets of stress. Because as you guys know, I work very holistically. So you'll see in the group, I do meditations and I've done the EFT and we do psychic healings and some health trainings and all the things. And that's great. And that is why I'm trying to show you that we need to be looking at everything holistically. That's what's required now in our environment. So on a physical level, let's start there. So we just started talking about, the various parts of the body. You've got the central nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is more the calming, rest and digest, the healing state. And then you've got the sympathetic nervous system, which we tend to be more dominant in a lot of us, which is the fight or flight, the stress kind of sensation and response, if that makes sense. So physically, yes, as we know, it could just be you're physically doing too much running or, you're running around, things like that. Also, people don't think about the fact that, even sort of medications can be stressing you. Foods can be stressing you, like too much sugar, too much, even alcohol, things like that. Also, what people don't think about is the fact if you're skipping meals can actually stress the body, particularly if you have a level of adrenal dysfunction to begin with, which a lot of us do. So what I mean by that is, if, for instance, so just say your adrenals are already a little bit compromised and you're starting to, you're not having breakfast because you're in a rush. What happens is, it's like the blood sugar drops and then cortisol will start rushing in because it's like the body's almost like, oh, kind of hang on a sec here, blood sugar's too low. So it's like it gives you that burst kind of thing. This is the simplified sense. Of course, the body is more complex, as we know. But, that's kind of what is happening. And it's the same with if we're not eating enough. And even, you'll see these diets out there. That's why I wouldn't prescribe a one-size-fits-all for everyone because we're so different. We're so unique, all of us, in where we're at, where we've been, where we're going, all of those sort of factors. But that's why I always say macro balance, a little bit of fat, a little bit of good carbs and, the protein in each meal or snack. Because once again, a lot of us live on high carb diets, probably not in this group necessarily, but in society at large, people are having high carb meals, which is affecting the blood sugar. So I can see someone's just there. Is that Linda? Hi. I'm just talking all about stress here. So I've been going for quite a while already, but we've just sort of literally just talking about, obviously it's very subjective. It depends on our filters. We spoke a little bit about physiologically and the importance of eating macro balancing, a little bit of fat, a little bit of carbs and good carbs and protein in each meal or snack, because we want to keep the blood sugar stable, especially, as I said, if there's been historical stress, or adrenal dysfunction or even thyroid dysfunction. And, if you're probably, say, under 40, under 45, you don't want to be having a really, really low carb diet, because that's potentially going to be affecting your cycle, your menstrual cycle, because you need enough, energy to be menstruating. So plain and simple. So physically, as we said, you want to be making sure that you're not skipping meals, you're eating regularly, you're eating macro balanced. Then also caffeine. So many people come to me, and when I start bringing it to their attention, okay, do you realize you're having this much caffeine a day? So some people are having 3, 4, I had someone a couple of days ago, 5 coffees a day. And, I see that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Richard's got some cafes. I have 1 coffee each day, but I don't have it on an empty stomach when I first wake up, and it is 1 a day. I don't have any other caffeine. Occasionally I have a matcha green tea, which matcha admittedly is quite high in caffeine. But, that's it. I'm seeing people that are having multiple coffees, they're having black tea, they're having energy drinks, they might be having supplements, like all these things potentially have caffeine. Anything above 210 milligrams has been shown to potentially cause more anxiety-like symptoms for people. People will say that, I can feel my heart racing, So not everyone can tolerate caffeine. We break it down differently. So that's on a physical level. I mean, we can go on about more on the physical, but that's kind of what's happening. And I mean, you see sometimes people doing too much physical exercise, and that's raising cortisol, or they're doing exercise at night and that's raising cortisol, affecting sleep quality. So that's on a physical. Then we've got to look at emotional. Okay, so what's driving the stress and emotional level? So this is where you see people that, have been eating very clean, they've been, very active their whole lives, and they end up with these diseases. And yet, as we said, they're so multifaceted. But sometimes if you look at the quality of their, like their relationships and their emotional state, you can feel like it's like, there's people that are constantly angry. They're always angry. And, you can see how that is raising stress hormones. Same with, frustration, resentment. You see people that for many, many years, it's like this resentment is festering under the surface, or this frustration or this anger. That is affecting, our nervous system. So that can be potentially putting us into fight or flight, causing the stress. Some of this is known to us, but some of it's not known to us. And as in, a lot of it's repressed. We've had it there for many years, but it wasn't safe. We perceived it wasn't safe to feel it. We weren't encouraged to feel it. We don't know how to feel it and experience it. So it's repressed. It's shoved down there. It's still sitting there. It's still holding up space. It's never actually been processed. That can be driving stress. So as I said, emotions that we're experiencing daily, emotions that are repressed. Issues are in the tissues. That's what's causing dis-ease. Okay, so we've got emotions. And then we've got, look at the mental side of things. Okay, so this is looking at the quality of your thoughts, your mental diet. So what kind of thoughts are you having each day? As Joe Dispenza, I know I quote this all the time, but it just really, it struck a chord with me. By the time you're 35, you are, is it 95% or pretty much, just this habitual set of thoughts and actions and behaviors and responses. So, we're on autopilot mode. We're having the same thoughts. And they reckon that, most of them, are the same as what we had yesterday, and most of them are more negative by nature. So, these thoughts could be things like, oh my gosh, I've got so much to do, never enough time. Why can't they do it right? I'll just do it myself, da-da-da-da-da. Can you see how this is causing more stress? If we're having, 70,000 thoughts a day, can you see how you could potentially be getting stressed, every few seconds, every few minutes potentially? So that's the next thing. So what are your quality of your thoughts? And then your words. So what are you actually saying to yourself when you're alone? What are you saying to your partner, your kids, your friends, your colleagues? We can all think about people that, are always out there talking about their problems. They're keeping it out. They're keeping the energy alive. Or you don't understand, the victim mode. And don't get me wrong, I was in victim mode for many years. I understand it intimately. But, it's like, can you see how that is keeping the stress alive? It's keeping the stress going. And it was funny. I remember years ago, when I was, full-time work, full-time study. As I said, I did that for, I'm going to say, a good 15 years, full-time work, full-time study. And then I did, part-time work, part-time study. But, it was like my mantra. People would say, Belinda, how are you going? Oh, busy, 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 and I was running around like a headless chook. And being an empath and being in the corporate world and being around, marketing teams where it's like rush, 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 deadline, 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 I would absorb that as well. So that's a whole different piece as well. That's what I'll go into in a moment, the spiritual side of things potentially. But with this mental piece, as I said, it's like the thoughts, the words. So start to become more aware of the thoughts that you're having and the words that you're speaking. You're speaking things into existence, as they said in the Bible, and God said, let there be. It's like he's speaking things into existence. We're the same. We're made in his likeness. So things, become like our thoughts, our words become things, so just be mindful of that. And then of course you've got the whole law of attraction, the law of assumption, self-concept, all in the online space. It's huge at the moment. And it's all about, our thoughts, our words. What are we saying about ourselves? All of that. So that's the mental side of things. So we've had, physical, the emotional, the mental. And then in terms of spiritual, yes, you could class, I suppose, being an empath in a way there. A lot of us are very, very sensitive to the environment around us, to what people are saying and thinking and doing, and that can be on a real collective level. So you could be absorbing things from the planet, and so that can be affecting us too. So, we almost need to be doing practices to be protecting ourselves. And also when it comes to, spiritually, a lot of us, grew up in, sometimes people grew up in religious kind of ways, religious belief systems, where it was almost like the fear of God was put into you, in the sense that I know with me, as a child, I was always very hungry for, some sort of higher understanding of, from a very young age. And I went to different friends' churches and I was reading the Bible. And I was taking it literally as a child, and I was quite scared. It's like, oh shit, God's going to come down the middle of the night. He's going to take one person and not the other. And it was like I was really this judgment, this condemnation. So I was so scared of God. I was so scared of all of that. That's fear. Fear drives stress. People have fear about so many things. What do they say? One of the top 3 fears is the fear of public speaking, like speaking in front of people. The fear of death. They're big fears for people. Drives stress, the fear. It's that fear response. So we've got all of that, the spiritual, and of course the energetic. So, empath can go into that as well, as we're picking up things energetically and, really thoughts and words and all of that. And even beliefs. Beliefs can go into the mental, it can go into the energetic, spaces, but our beliefs also will impact things. So if you've got beliefs sitting there, like there's never enough time, all of that, or, I've got to prove my worth, or, that is going to be driving the stress response. So a lot of us also have a lot of childhood wounds, because as we know, the subconscious mind was formed up to about 7-8 years of age. A lot of us felt that, for whatever reason, there was something wrong with us because we didn't get what we needed at the time in the way that we believed that we needed. So, as we said, it doesn't matter, what actually had happened. So people will perceive it differently. But if you as a child perceive that, you didn't get the love that you needed in the way that you needed, that can be quite traumatizing. So, you can start forming beliefs that there's something wrong with you, you're not enough. And if you're thinking that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not lovable, you're not deserving, can you see how that can set you up for patterns in a lifetime of proving, like, I'm going to work really hard, I'm going to win them over, I'm going to prove my worth, and that's driving this stress response further. So are you starting to see how there's so many facets to stress? So, don't get me wrong, like, you know what I mean? I've got a plethora of supplements, I've got magnesium coming out, I've got millions and millions of magnesiums, you name it. Magnesium's great, as we know, for people that are stressed. I've got all sorts of calming sort of, carvers, I've got passion flowers, I've got St. John's worts, I've got, adrenal tonics, adrenoplex, with the ginsengs, the withanias. I take B vitamins, GABA, L-theanine. There's some great things that you can do to support your nervous system, to, really nourish the adrenals, help balance it. But at the end of the day, we've got to consider and look at what is actually driving it, what is causing it. So hopefully this is all making sense. As I said, it is so multifaceted. There is so much there, but you need to look at every level. Most of this is not conscious, as we know. 95 to 99% of it's not conscious to us. It's in the subconscious. So we don't always know what is sitting there. And that is where, I love modalities like Creatrix, where, I'm sitting with you. I am listening to your narratives. I'm listening to what's coming up. It's like, I need to get exactly what, you were saying. What's your block? What's your chronic emotional state? And we need to then erase it, essentially. We need to get back to the epigenetics level, because the other piece of this is, do you realize that we actually inherit in our DNA, this is whole epigenetics, stressors, traumas, beliefs, stories, all that sort of stuff. So sometimes, it's not even our stress. It's just in our DNA from lifetimes. So there's that piece as well. And also, if you're a female, our wiring is quite different from males. So the way that our brain is, our prefrontal cortex, our limbic system, our hippocampus, all those parts of the brain, what it means is we move to fear faster. We ruminate more, which, ruminating thoughts is what causes more stress and anxiety, because you're thinking about the things over and over and replaying it. That's just the way it is. We can't get back to, the men were the hunters, we were the gatherers, so it was like the men were designed to, get into fight or flight. It's inbuilt in them, but then they can almost get back to, and don't get me wrong, this isn't for everyone, but this is on a physiological primitive sense. They could get back to balance more quickly than us females. For us females, cortisol is much more detrimental. So, Nilva, hi, how are you? So I've been on a bit of a rant. I've been covering stress and what's driving the stress. We've looked at every piece. We've looked at physical, we've looked at emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic. So we've sort of said it's so multifaceted. All these things are driving it. Our mental diet, our thoughts, our beliefs, our stories, the emotions, what's suppressed, what's known, all of that, of course, physical, diet. And then there's another piece to this. So we just spoke about epigenetics. So, we're inheriting things in our DNA. So the traumas, the stories, all of that. And I'm not meaning to stress you here, but this is just to give you the full picture of things that you need to be mindful of. Then there's also gene mutations. And as we know, just because you've got a gene mutation doesn't mean it's going to be expressed. But if it is expressed, that's when you have problems. So, the MTHFR, often, a lot of people are getting tested for that these days. So, yes, I've got the, the 1298, I've got the 677, I'm heterozygous, homozygous, da-da-da-da-da. I've got one of each, so I'm compound heterozygous to the two. So what this means is if you have this methylation dysfunction, it can be much harder for you to turn off the stress response. Then they also is other gene sequencing and things that they look at. For instance, like the COMT, C-O-M-T, you can look it up. So if you have you might have a fast COMT, you might have a slow COMT. I have a slow COMT. What that means is, for me to break down stress hormones, it takes a long time. And unfortunately, there's things that will slow it down even more, like protein. So it's like, oh gosh, so, you could be eating a higher protein diet and inadvertently causing your catecholamines to not be broken down properly, your stress hormones. So, there's so much at play here. And then, we've got to kind of, there's different ways, as I said, we can approach it. Yes, we can, meditation, amazing. EFT, amazing. Working on the vagus nerve, fantastic. All these things are great. Journaling, sitting in the emotions, all of this stuff is fantastic. There's great modalities. But you've got to work on all of these levels, because if you're not addressing, the epigenetics piece, if you're not addressing physical, emotional, mental, it's only, one part of the pie, one piece of the puzzle, if that makes sense. If you have a limiting belief sitting there, nothing works for me, I'm not enough, something is wrong, that's going to keep showing up. It doesn't matter what you do. If you have a belief sitting there that life is really hard, it's a scary place to be, all of that, once again, that's going to be reflected back to you. So these things have to be brought to our conscious awareness. They have to be upgraded, superseded, replaced with things that work for us. So as you can see, I'm so passionate about this because this has been my life story, and trying to piece it all together myself, because, it was like I was seeing different practitioners, different modalities, and they were all giving me like a little piece of the puzzle, but it wasn't necessarily addressing it holistically. And so that's what's really, prompted me and fueled me on this journey to keep learning all the different pieces of the puzzle. And don't get me wrong, there's still a hell of a lot that's not known to us yet. But that's also, and I didn't even touch on this, the whole psychic intuitive piece. You guys know I am quite psychic. I always have been, and it's something I'm doing more and more. And it was funny, for a long time, it was like, I remember years ago when I was at Amway the first time around, because I didn't really tell many people about it. But when people found out, I remember, they'd get me to do readings. I remember one time we were at the Fiddler, which is probably not a great idea. I was in the wool shed, which remember when that was there. I know it's not now, but I remember I did some psychic readings there, and I was so accurate. And afterwards, when I found out what had happened there and the different battles and things like that in the past, it's like, oh my gosh, what was I even tapping into? So I've been doing that for years, so it's something that now that I'm doing it more regularly, it's just getting stronger and stronger. And all of us, of course, are intuitive, but that is another piece of it too, because when you're naturally kind of able to tune in and see what else is sitting there energetically, that can really help immensely as well, like looking at the chakras, looking at the energy body. And of course, the more that we can tune inwards and trust our own intuition, it's like we start to have more self-trust, more self-belief. We start to realize that, we're not alone, and that we are connected, and we are part of all that is, and we are whole and complete. And all of these kind of things just give you more of a sense of calm and reassurance that, you're not alone, you're on track, you do have support. So I know I probably waffled on for quite some time, but as I said, if you can really get like what I'm laying out here, you can see it's just so key, because we know 90% or something of doctors' visits have been, because of stress. And stress is what anyone that has a medical condition will tell you. Stress will exacerbate it. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's acne, if it's, allergies, if it's gut stuff, stress will exacerbate it. And, hormonal imbalances, anything. We know it just has this flow-on effect. Cortisol, as they say, it will affect you, in every level, short term and longer term. Melissa, hi, how are you? So, as I said, listen to this again, see the information that's here. And, for those of you that need extra support, please reach out. So, yes, I do one-off health consults, which I don't necessarily encourage, because for all these reasons, you can see why. We're only looking at one component. And same with, yes, I can do energy healing sessions, psychic sessions, but I love to, I've worked with a few people in this kind of fashion where it's a 12-week one-to-one every week. And we look at every single level. So we work on the physical, we work on the emotional, we work intuitively, we work on the deep stuff that's, sitting there in the subconscious, our programming, what is being mirrored back to us, the whole epigenetics piece, and then we actually we just clear what's in the way. We look at what's sitting there in the body energetically, the emotions and all of that, the repressed emotions. So, as I said, if you do need extra support, if you are potentially interested in looking at what a 12-week one-to-one total mind, body, soul transformation would look like, let me know. We can jump on a call, because I kid you not, this is my life work, because it's like I see so many people out there, so many coaches, and they're great, and they, celebrate with me, I've helped my clients make this amount of money, I've done this, and it's like, what, that's great, and I take my hat off to them, but you want to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing it in a way that you're not impacting your nervous system and your entire physiology in your entire mindset in the process, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'll love you and leave you. I will see you in probably another 4 hours. We'll do some little psychic readings and healings and clearings like that. I won't be doing it next Wednesday. I've actually signed up. I'm so excited. So I haven't done a course for a while, and you guys know I love learning new things. This is an amazing modality, and it's going to be an interesting one, because I'm doing it in a full-on intensive over a few days, and because it's in the UK and you have to do it live, so as in through Zoom, it's like 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. So that's going to be an interesting few days. So I won't be here next Wednesday doing the psychic readings, but tonight, 7:30, I will. So anyway, let me know how this is landing for you, if it makes sense. If you can see how, as I said, it's not just a case of there's one little thing you're worrying about. Stress is caused by so many things. I didn't even talk about toxins, but toxins can be also stressing your system. So, toxins that are sitting there, parasites that are sitting there, pathogens. I saw this integrative doctor, I'll just say this before I get off, and he was in Manly, and he had this listen technology. I had parasites sitting in my adrenals that were throwing out stress. I had worms sitting there. I had, in my pancreas, I had eggs that were, and I think it was parasites. He was able to see all this sort of stuff. And being an integrative GP, he could prescribe medication to actually kind of kill it, as well as herbs and things like that. I had this sitting there which was causing my cortisol to be, elevated, my adrenaline, my blood sugar, which then, because of the pancreas, which was then affecting my whole, nervous system. So there is so many facets to this that are causing stress. It's never one thing. It really isn't. So on that note, I'll love you and leave you, and I will see you in a few hours. Okay, bye.